We're looking now at the atmosphere around DEI and how intense it is. There is certainly a lot of litigation going on, but you both say it's important to understand the context in this current climate and the nuances. So, Jamillah, I want to begin with you. Can you give us a brief outline of the different types of buckets of legal activity that are happening right now?
Sure, yes, agreed. Very intense environment. It's good to at least start by learning how to navigate this and learning what the different buckets of activity are. So with context one, we have the state legislation that's happening. Alabama is the most recent that we've seen in this. We've seen the Stop Woke Act. So you need to know if you're in one of those states that are passing laws specific to that state that outlaw certain types of DEI activities. This is particularly if you're in the higher ed or education space. We also have Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, where we're seeing what has been called reverse discrimination claims. So these are claims brought by white people in most cases, so people who are majority groups, but they are saying that they have been discriminated against, not hired or promoted because of their race and due to a DEI policy. So those are on the rise. We've also seen the lawsuits that are targeting the funds and the foundations that are attempting to provide access to capital. So in most of the cases, these are small amounts of capital to Black-owned business, minority-owned business, Black women. And so we have different types of constitutional and contract claims coming up against those. We have claims that are coming up against employers for their internship or scholarship programs that are for Black, Indigenous, Latino, other underrepresented talent that are trying to gain access to fields and industries where there have been barriers to entry. And then we have those that are targeting the supplier diversity. So saying that you can't give grants to minority and women-owned businesses or incentives or encourage them, companies to do business with them as contractors. So those are some of the main legal buckets. And then complicating it even more, you get these letters from attorneys generals that are different depending on if you're in a blue state or a red state that are saying that, you know, you need to cut certain DEI programs. The blue state saying keep the DEI programs. You're having investor lawsuits coming, and you're getting, you know, different types of actions against boards. So here's just the broader context, but those are some of the buckets, and the legal issues are different in each. So I want people to just slow down when they're thinking about any adjustments or next directions about the different legal issues that are involved in each of those different types of activity or type of claim.
That's very important to understand, because Zakiyyah, people need to know where to focus their attention, and it's just so many different types of cases. Why are they being brought now, and exactly against whom? What should corporate leaders be most concerned about right now?
I think the most important thing is to understand that these cases did not start in the aftermath of the decision in June 2023. These cases were filed in the 2 to 3 years leading up to it, dozens of cases. To give you context, we at Gibson Dunn, we have a DEI task force that monitors all of the litigation, and we saw within 3 months that same number of cases, dozens of cases and letters were sent to companies in the aftermath of the decision. At this point, we are seeing cases being filed every 2 weeks. Initially, we didn't think, we have an update that we publish on our website, we didn't think we would have enough content for it. And in fact, we didn't expect for it to be this much, and we don't expect for it to slow down. And so what I would say is initially these cases were filed against nonprofits, law firms, governmental agencies. Now, at colleges and universities, now you're seeing more and more companies. So I would say be prepared for it, monitor it. But really, many of the claims involve challenges that involve opportunities or grants that are provided to racial minority groups. And so as you're thinking about your programming and what you're doing, I would just monitor, I would say stay informed, but also realize what the focus is. And as Jamillah said, the funds are being targeted. Our firm represents the Fearless Fund. Again, a small grant, $20,000 being provided to Black women to expand their businesses. And they're utilizing Section 1981, as you know, that was passed in the aftermath of the Civil War to help the formerly enslaved. So taking this law to say that this is not legal, what these two Black women entrepreneurs know how hard and difficult it is to expand their business, and they want to provide an opportunity. So the fight, while over a small amount of money, will have a huge impact going forward.
Yeah, Zakiyyah, that's a very important point, because as you're talking about these legal challenges, I'm thinking about how companies can prepare for the financial challenge of dealing with this litigation. Whether or not it's merited, they are still going to have to spend a lot of money to deal with this, especially if you're saying there's a case every 2 weeks. How do companies and leaders prepare for the financial aspect of these legal challenges? What should they know about the cost?
Well, really interestingly, many of these first lawsuits were filed against nonprofits. So imagine thinking about the cost for a nonprofit. Now for companies, I think that it has a huge impact. I don't think anyone wants to be in litigation. We're finding it hard with the clients that we have. So I think more importantly, it's to prepare their thinking about your risk and what risk you're willing to take. And having your lawyers, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, do an exercise and where you assess your risk to see, is it the litigation? Do you want to go through litigation? It's not only is it costly, it's just a difficult process.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you still need to know about the different buckets, Jamillah, and know what type of legal activity may be coming your way. As you become more informed, what do you do now to perhaps reframe, reshape the DEI initiatives that your company has?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I think just going back to the prior conversation, it's first just important to really note and understand the context before you think about how to mitigate it. So this is primarily right now about Black and brown people who are becoming more visible, gaining access, even if it is pretty small and incremental, better jobs, opportunities, sharing space. So this is very broad and systemic. So while there may be some costs and we may want to mitigate the risks in some cases, this is not the type to back down when there's a widespread effort to roll back the progress and roll back civil rights more generally. It may be about Black and brown people right now, but it will expand. So I just want to put that out there before I get into the next part of it. I think it's important to look at the data. Look at data within your company, both qualitative and quantitative data. Many of these cases, if they're in Title VII, there are defenses to defend your DEI or affirmative action programs in corporate spaces under Johnson v. Transportation and United Steelworkers v. Weber. You have to look at those cases and know that you need to identify where the inequality is, where the lack of resources, where the lack of supports are in your company specifically. Who's not getting equitable pay? Who's not getting good looks for equitable looks for promotion and so forth? Talk to people, bring them to the table, see where the gaps are. Once you see where those gaps are, if you're structuring your programs to address those specific gaps, you have a much better defense versus just arbitrarily making goals or targets that are sort of pulled from thin air. So I would say really focus on internally what's happening, and then be tailored and conscious and strategic about what is put in place in response to that.
Absolutely. And Zakiyyah, as leadership is leading on this issue, is being transparent about that data the best way to do that, or what would be your suggestion?
I think with data, I think that all businesses make decisions based on some type of data. So quantitative, qualitative, you only know where you want to, get to when you look at where you are and assess it. I think that's every organization has to think through that. But I also think you need to think about, and I have my sort of consultant hat, we work with a lot of consultants, and one in particular talks about, it's not just about the data, it's about what are the systems and processes within your institution that may be impeding progress. And so I would say combined with the data, Also look at, are there barriers to advancement or recruitment or retention, and focus on that as well.
You know, there have been a lot of discussion, many companies, about the business case for DEI. We're doing it because there's a business case for DEI. Is that what companies should be focused on? Do you agree with that as the best way to frame this discussion?
I'll take this first.
Okay, Jamillah.
I was just going to say, I do a lot of research and writing on this topic. I don't think it's the best approach. Is there a business case? Absolutely. I'm more for the humanity case that was just discussed on the last segment. If you believe that Black people, Latinos, Indigenous people that are worthy of space, sharing opportunities, you care about their well-being just like other workers, develop them, include them in your organization, give them access to opportunities, treat them with dignity, especially after doors have been closed or barely open, starting to barely crack open for so long. I don't think we should have to prove in every little step this business case that people belong there, that long should have been included in these organizations given our nation's history. So I just feel this is an opportunity to do better than a business case and to really do this because it's doing what's right.
Zakiyyah, as you're litigating these cases, though, how important is it to show a return on investment? However you decide to term that, is that an important part of the strategy in defending or you know, in these cases?
I would say no. I don't know if we look at it that way. I think you're fighting for something. So I guess the way that I would think about it is, you know, you want to attract the next generation of talent. It's very clear from the study that was shown by the Black Economic Alliance that people support DEI across religion, across race, across age. I think the way that I think about it is you want to have an environment that people want to come into and that they can thrive. You want to have an inclusive organization. And so I guess what I would say is, do you want to be the organization of the future? You have Gen Z who are more diverse than ever, who care about these issues. Their jobs of the future don't even exist. And so if the legal profession or any sector wants to attract them, you have to think about what they want. And not only what they want, but what your employees want. And so I guess the way I think about it is this organization a place where people feel like they can thrive, where they feel like they can be their authentic selves, and that's the organization of the future.
Absolutely. I mean, Jamillah, a lot of people, particularly younger employees, they're focused on values, regardless of where the company is on DEI. Overall, what are their values like? And then on the other end, you have people who may have been in the trenches for a very long time on DEI efforts, or just being that one or two people of color on a team for a decade and say, can I still do this? So we're talking about a multi-generational approach that companies have to have. What advice do you have for them in dealing with this?
Yeah, I think a lot of this does, in fact, come back to the values. And this is particularly just reflecting on 2020, where so many people came out and companies, leaders came out making commitments in support of the Black community, in support of racial justice and economic opportunity. So I think a lot of this is really boiling down to why companies are really doing DEI in the first place. And then that's going to help us understand the reactions that we're seeing now, what's real, and perhaps what wasn't real, right? If organizations do truly value things like justice and inclusion, valuing difference, and they think those things are making their workplace better, helpful for society more generally, taking us into a different future, then they're not going to be so quick to flip and abandon that work now. And remember, too, when it comes back to the legal risk, nothing is going to be risk-free, right? Nothing in business is ever risk-free, particularly the things that are valuable. So we wouldn't expect that to be the case here. So I would just say know your values. And once you take a stand on something, like, again, many have, after the murder of George Floyd, many did, then just stick to it and defend it if you think it's needed and is making a positive impact on your organization and your employees and doing the broader social good. So that's part of it, just sticking to it.
And Sharon,
Sticking to it. Yes, go ahead.
Sharon, if I could just say, I find that many of our clients are. We're on the phones with clients all the time, and they're trying to figure out how they can continue to do and make an impact in the current climate. And I'll also say there was an article, a Harvard Business Review article about 15 years ago by Marshall Goldsmith, and he talked a lot about organizations embracing the tension around diversity and talked about the value around diversity of bringing in diverse viewpoints and perspective. But in that, there was bound to be tension. And so my view is you have to navigate it. And he talked about how companies and organizations that embrace that tension, and that means you're dealing with people who have many different viewpoints on it, are stronger organizations for it. So I say, think about your values, but I also say, think about how to embrace some of the tensions that are a part of diversity as well.
That's interesting, Zakiyyah. Does that give you hope for the future of DEI initiatives at companies?
It gives me a lot of hope. I think you have so many tools now that was not at our disposal in the past. You have really great organizations like we heard from earlier. You have organizations that have been working on the pipeline and actually have a formula for success, like ELC and MLT and others. But you also have more organizations working closely together: consultants, academics, nonprofit organizations, organizations that are stepping up, like the Global Black Economic Forum that we partner to bring the Fairless Fund lawsuit, and LDF and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, who are saying to nonprofits, if you are impacted by this, we will help you. So I feel very hopeful. My peers make me feel very hopeful, my colleagues, but it does not change the fact that this is a really hard time and that it is really disturbing, some of the things that we're experiencing at this time.
Yeah, in light of all the legal challenges, it is a very disturbing time. And so, Jamillah, is that a reason to be, is there still reason to be hopeful?
Absolutely. I think the first step is of hope, or the first part I feel hopeful about, is the fact that people are showing up to conversations like this. They're asking questions, they're doing research. So I think people should not be afraid to push back some and ask the questions. Do these cuts need to happen? Do these positions and programs need to be slashed? If so, why? Is it because of the state I'm in? Is it because of this type of lawsuit? And then to think and reflect. And so I think that's part of what makes me hopeful, is that people are seeking out the information, which I think can actually turn this into something better than where it was before. We can become more innovative about equity and inclusion and opportunity. We can become more strategic. I've also seen lots of solidarity, as Zakiyyah just mentioned, people coming together, sharing these horrible stories of things that are happening to them in this climate, but then also supporting one another. It's mobilizing allies to come and support some of these organizations or people who are doing this work. So I feel like that part is very promising, because that brings power. It helps you recognize your worth and your value. It helps you not accept the current terms and current state of, even if you're facing hostility and intimidation and threats, you come together and you can move forward with something stronger and even better and more powerful for the future. So that part definitely gives me hope.